Hello and welcome to the break room. My name is Ebube and you are listening to Popcorn for Dinner. Happy New Year, because we have quite a year ahead of us. And this year starts with the return of what might be the most anticipated sci-fi show of the year. So far anyway, there's still more to come. Severance. Severance Season 2 has been long coming and our excitement is beyond measure. I'm going to break down the entire Season 1 for everyone here. Well, everyone here really is just myself and Chinedu, but that's honestly going to also include you, happy listener. We're glad to have you. Thank you so much for everything in 2024. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for listening to us, watching our videos. Thank you for engaging with our crackpot theories. And thank you for being as interested in all these shows as we are. As far as Season 2 goes of Severance, it's going to be a lot of questions. And I'm so glad Chinedu is here because I can't do it alone. So I think at this point, Chinedu, how's it going?
I'm good. Hi, everyone. Happy New Year. Super excited to discuss this show. I've been seeing all the articles all over the TL on Twitter, and literally everything is hits after hits after hits. Like I've seen
It's
nothing.
crazy.
I've seen nothing give it lower than a 9/10. So I'm super gassed to be here. Yeah.
Bro, Season 2 already has a 100% critic rating.
Bro,
like from people who have seen it, like 100% critic rating. Like outlets like IndieWire are already praising it. Like it's wild.
Flawless.
It's wild.
Flawless is the only thing I've seen across board, and I'm super excited. You have no idea.
So I feel like I should ask, how did you get into this show?
That is a good question, and I think the honest answer is I have no idea. I think it might have been typically how I usually watch shows is one of two ways. My girlfriend either tells me about them, or I'm bored and I just go through Apple TV or Disney Plus and just look for something new. So
Are those
it's
your
either one of
platforms of
them.
choice? Those are your go-tos? Apple TV Plus and Disney. You're not a Netflix guy, not a Prime guy.
I think
which is fine. Just checking.
I think I thought of the cruelty organizations first before I went to joking.
Oh my god! Wow!
Too soon.
Too soon. Oh man. Okay. Well, speaking of cruelty, Severance has a lot of interesting things going on along those lines. Depending on who you ask, we're talking about torture. We're talking about goats being kept in rooms. What do the goats mean? We still don't know. But I think this show is one of those things where it's cerebral with a purpose. It's not trying to confuse you. It's trying to lay things out for you in order for you to find them and then be absolutely delighted when you uncover the mystery. It reminds me of Westworld Season 1. Oh my God, Westworld Season 1. What a time that was. Where did that go? Anyway, how about we recap Season 1 of Severance for people? So, for anyone who doesn't know, if so, welcome, by the way. Please watch Severance before actually listening to this video or listening to this podcast.
100%.
You should. Like, the show is mind-blowing. Just go do that and come back. I promise we'll still be here. I'll wait for you personally. For everyone else, Severance essentially, well, it's a bit of a journey, right? And I think the main motif behind it is essentially grief. So with grief being the driving force, at least for the protagonist, we get to see how and why people make the decisions that govern their lives. So the show starts with this guy named Mark, whose last name is Scout. He is apparently a history professor in the outside world, but he's undergone a procedure that is pioneered by the company he works for now, an organization named Lumen. They supposedly were into medical stuff at some point, medical technology, but the process Severance, it feels so weird to say this because, again, the premise of this show basically feels like a spoiler, but I guess it's fine. I'm guessing everybody who is still here has
Yeah,
watched Severance.
yeah.
So, just for anyone who doesn't remember, Severance is something that allows you to separate your work life from your home life. So it's like you have work-life balance. You never have to think about work when you're at home because you have no memory of it. And when you're at work, you have no memory of what's going on outside. You actually have no idea what's happening. You don't even know who you are out there. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
you're two different people. Well, it is like you're two different people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we find out at the beginning of the show that Mark lost his wife in a car accident. And I think the grief essentially is what drove him to actually pursue Severance and start a new life working for this company. We get a sense of how it's working for him so far. It's not entirely clear, but we know that he has some coworkers, some of whom Chinedu definitely likes because these characters are a wacky group. they, it's interesting because they couldn't be more different, and I like the way
Yeah.
they were cast. It really makes for a diverse set of perspectives for the vehicle that drives the story forward, which is like these four protagonists who work together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chido, what do you think of them? Like, please carry on with the recap. Actually, I know you just finished your rewatch today. I'm still in the middle of mine, but I know you finished
Yeah.
your rewatch of season one and
Yeah.
everything.
I think in terms of a recap, and what I think of the characters, I think they're an interesting um story to us as to how different the Severance project or the Severance experiments can go for different people.
Yeah,
I
because
think
like they're
Mark.
inserting something into your neck, right? Like it's
Yes,
like a
yes,
chip.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. So, like you said, grief is the driving motif for most of the characters, and I know when you said that, it reminded me of we have an episode with Downtime Hajar where Banky from our podcast and Ibuka from our podcast go on Downtime with Hajar and they discuss Severance as well as a recap. You should check that out too. And
Definitely.
Banky said something where he said, no semi-functioning person or something along those lines. So paraphrasing here, no semi-functioning person will go on Severance. And
Yeah, Bankley is way too emotional to be doing procedures like Severance. There's just no way. Yeah.
No, but when he said that, it seemed accurate. But then, obviously, thinking about this recap and what you've just said, and Heli R is a semi-functioning person that has decided to go on this recap. So
Emphasis on
what
the
we
semi.
exactly emphasis on this. I mean, you see, that's the thing. This show has so much to because now to you because he has decided to keep that life separate her being an asshole is her not being semi-functioning, but some people would disagree with that. But I
Mm-hmm.
digress. I digress.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's just interesting that it can go different ways for different people. And I think just watching how they come in as this group that are completely different, have completely different experiences in the office. You have this guy who's really excited about finger traps and the waffle parties that they have got going on. You have this very experienced head who wants to be pretty much he's telling us he wants to be the head of the department, but he's
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And you've got this guy that just lost his best friend from work,
Mm-hmm.
and we see his outside life chase that best friend who is not dead and he's reintegrating into society. And they've all got different backstories as to why they've come into the show, and we get to explore their different backstories and how Severance affects them individually.
Yeah.
Um, and also obviously we touch on the wider topics that the show wants to tell us about capitalism, about grief, like you said, mental health. There's so much, like it's it's a perfect show to show how complicated we are as human beings, how complicated our lives are, in terms of work, in terms of family, and how these things intertwine, even in terms of romance. And we we'll talk about it. I'm talking too
Mm-hmm.
much already. I
Well, yeah,
just
I
really
mean,
love this show, and obviously the passion just comes across like when I talk about it.
the
So
passion
yeah.
should come across because this show is one of those slow burn things. You don't think that much is going to happen, right? I asked you how you got into it, and like it probably wasn't even something where you made a huge decision. You're just like, okay, let me just get into this. Like for me, I was seeing the ads and stuff like that. I think they had, you know, like campaigns going on like social media platforms and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I saw that Ben Stiller was directing. I thought that was interesting as well because it's
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
like Ben Stiller.
yeah.
And
Exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
more on that later. More on that later. It's not as if I had doubts about Ben Stiller, but it's just that was just one of the most random things that I could have seen in that
It's a
moment.
pleasant surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember getting into the show and starting to understand what was actually happening, like what the characters were into, what their problems were, what they felt like their successes were, what the premise is, and I was like, okay, this is maybe the most unique like beginning I've ever seen because it's like, okay, the proposition here has a lot of potential. And then you keep watching it and then you find out that they get this new employee to replace the friend that you talked about that our protagonist lost, Mark, right? He loses PD, but then he gets Heli R. And they've become this group that is somewhat figuring out that their life isn't what they think it is or what they think it should be. There's like they're fine with the fact that their Audi does whatever their Audi does. But in a sense, because Heli R comes in and like shakes things up, and that is ironic in more ways than one because of who Heli R's Audi is.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she comes in and she shakes this up and she's not okay with what's happening. Again, despite what is happening in the outside world. And that leads them on this journey to try to get out of things, to try to understand what's happening on the outside, to try to see if they can escape. We learn a lot about, you know, the family that kind of runs this company, the Egans. And one thing that always struck me so deeply was the sense of religiosity in this show. There are so many themes of, you know, worshiping royalty. There's so many themes of, you know, divine intervention. There's so many themes of becoming divine. There's so many things of blood superiority, all those things like that. And, you know, we even have lore where they've pitted departments against each other because they don't want them to interact because they don't know what they don't like. They don't want anybody like becoming strong together, and they also don't want information to get out.
Hmm.
And you know, I think about all that stuff. You know, I think about like worship of a founder. I think about a giant campus where secret tech is being created. I
Yeah.
think about employees that don't necessarily talk to each other about certain projects.
Yeah.
And I think then about the company that produces this particular show. And I'm like, this is the biggest irony I have ever seen. Like, how is it possible that a show like this, about a company like this, doing a project like this, is produced by Apple, one of the, if not the largest multinational corporation on earth? Like,
Yeah.
it's funny. And then the good thing about it is it's kind of stays in the background because you're so concerned with everything else that the show is doing that
Hmm.
the journey is really what is rewarding you. Like every episode is unique. Every episode you learn something significant. And right up until that ninth episode, the finale, which I also thought was cool. Like I'm always happy when a show is not afraid to do exactly the number of episodes it wants without feeling like they need to do a 10th or whatever. Like they didn't
Hmm.
want to give us fluff. They just said, we have 9 strong episodes. We know exactly the story we want to tell this season.
Yeah.
And they did that, you know. Without getting too deep into what happened in the finale, in case anybody who didn't actually watch the show is still sitting here, I'm just going to say that that weird things are revealed, and we learn that the characters as well learn that the stakes for them are way higher than they realized. They have a lot that they're going to have to fight with in season 2, and I'm just looking forward to how they deal with that. So having said all that, that's kind of like a very broad recap. Let's get into
Hmm.
some finer details now, right?
Yeah.
In terms of, say, specific moments that were pivotal in the season that kind of make the show memorable for us, and helped us realize that we were onto something good here, right?
Mhm.
What were they? Like, what was a memorable moment for you? Like something that you saw, you're just like, okay, this is a cool moment. And like I'm sure there's like a bunch of them. I definitely have at least more than one.
Yeah, yeah. The moment the show, we've already said it. The show thrives on giving us so much material to delve into. I would say the moments that's it doesn't stand out for me. I think it's a moment where it touched me. In a show that doesn't touch you as much,
Yeah, it's not like it's
this
shrinking or anything like that.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't touch you as much. So I think I'll
Oh,
pick this
Apple.
out because of what it tells us. It was
Mm-hmm.
Mark's final wellness session with Miss Casey.
Okay.
And
In the break room.
yes, this is just after we find out that this is his long lost, and this is the lady that's his. Oh, is that a spoiler? Well, they've still
It is
stayed.
well, yeah, it's okay. It's okay at this point.
They've still stayed. But we can beat that out. But yeah, so this is that that he's been struggling with grief with, but he has no recollection of her. She has no recollection of him.
Mm-hmm.
The severance procedure is obviously working on them, but somehow this particular scene is telling us how powerful love is, how much soulmates that are meant to be can never be dragged apart. I think it's a beautiful moment, and
Yeah.
even Milchick and Cobell using the both of them as a testing experiment, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how complicated we are as human beings. There's that innate thing that you can't do with science. It sounds very, very soppy, but it's just love, and
It's supposed to be soppy. Yeah.
they're trying to perfect it. They're trying to perfect the experiment. They're trying to perfect removing those emotions from them, regardless of the procedure, and perfecting that. But they're still struggling with it. You hear
Yeah.
Milchick say, "This is a win." They don't remember each other, but Miss
Yeah.
Cobell is thinking, "No, can't you see what's going on here? They're still connecting. The
Yeah.
connection is still there, even though they're completely different people, completely different personalities from who
Mm-hmm.
they are. All we hear of she's lovely, she's kind, but this person is timid and shy, and she's a baby in the sense of Severance. But
Yeah. I think she said she'd only been awake for 107
107
hours.
hours, yeah, 107 hours. She's a baby in that sense, but they still connect, and soulmates will always find each other. So I think that moment was just beautiful. Um, yeah.
I think speaking of Mark, that actually ties into one moment that's very memorable for me. Is like in the beginning of the season. He's about to go home after working a full day at Lumen. So this is sort of his Audi, just grieving in the car, thinking about his wife again, and
Yeah.
he wipes his eye with a tissue that Inni Mike later finds in his pocket and throws away like it's nothing. By the way, oh my goodness, the irony. And what's interesting to me is on his way out, he actually almost hits somebody. That somebody is Helly, but we don't realize it at the time. Like it's Helly's Audi, right?
Mhm.
And the funny thing is, they don't know each other. Like they actually have no idea who they are. Despite the fact that they work together inside. This is so dark, but I'm trying to say this without fully explaining who Helly is. But essentially, Helly says to Mark when he almost hits her with his car, maybe watch where you're going, right? And when you think about the fact that Mark's wife had died, right? And this company knows who Mark is.
Mhm.
And Helly is somebody who is, let's just say, very high ranking in this company, or like very, very connected in this company,
Mhm.
in the outside world, in the real world. You start to see that she knows exactly who he is. She knows exactly how he got there, why he's here. And
Mhm.
you then realize that research was done on everybody in that group to
Yeah.
make sure that once Heli R gets there, she will be in the best environment. And we
Yeah.
also find out later why Milchick kept taking pictures of them, because there's something that Heli and the people and people around her in the outside world were trying to kind of reveal. They're trying to figure out.
Hmm.
It's quite a journey. So just understanding the fact that she knew who he was, and like there's no way he would have that on his own side.
It's
It was
pretty
just a bit
dark.
dark. It's pretty
Very,
dark
very,
because,
very, very dark.
and then you realize that Cobell is his next door neighbor on in the real world
You know what?
with a different name.
Watching this, and I texted him because I said the second watch just feels so much darker than the first time,
Because now
and
you have context for everything, and you realize that there's wickedness. There's wickedness everywhere
this is
you look.
terrible.
Oh
Oh my
man.
goodness. I don't know, maybe if it's the 3 years of life experiences accumulated into me now since the show last came out. And but yeah, like you said, I think I agree with you. The context, it's pretty dark. Very, very dark.
And another moment that kind of sticks out for me is, well, there's one big one in the finale where Mark's character yells something, and then the
Yeah.
season ends there, which is just not fair, man. It's been 3 years. Don't do that to me.
Perfect cliffhanger. Perfect cliffhanger. They could have
Yeah,
done it better. Couldn't have done it
yeah.
better because you 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 are almost you're so caught up in that moment. You want him to go and tell his sister what's
Yeah,
happened. It's
yeah.
so perfectly done. I'm telling you, because most cliffhangers you just don't expect it. This
Hmm.
obviously you don't expect it to end there, but at the same time you're so caught up in that moment, rooting for him to tell him, and then obviously he says enough where his sister is like, "What did you say?" But then he says little where she can easily obviously not toss it in the back of her
And now
mind,
it
but
becomes a mystery for her. I hope they give her more to do
exactly,
in season 2. Yeah, because
exactly.
she's obviously encountered somebody who was severed. There's that senator's wife who
Mhm.
encountered. She went through severance, so she wouldn't have to go through the mental and emotional turmoil of being pregnant. So
Yeah,
basically, there's a different version of her that deals with that and has a relationship with the child in that sense. But she doesn't. She's essentially just going to be delivered a fresh baby. That she doesn't have
that
the experiences of,
that is
like
true.
incubating.
So, do you think she was severed for the whole pregnancy or just the birth?
I think she was severed for the whole pregnancy.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
all.
And that
I
leaves
mean,
me,
that's very dark because that
it
senator's
is.
basically with someone who's not his
Yeah.
wife.
Well, they're both his wife, but his actual wife that he married is on the outside. But the person who was pregnant is different. So it's weird. So I guess whenever they're in, like, wherever they were birthing the baby and stuff like that,
Mhm.
whenever she goes to that place, whenever she goes to that place, she, like, it just kicks in for her. So yeah.
Fair, fair. Wow, I didn't even think of that. I just thought it was literally just for the birth of the child itself. Crazy.
And one interesting thing to me about that whole relationship, I suppose what it leads into is the ethics of severance in the first place. Now, in order to discuss this, I should probably mention the sort of origins of this concept. The creator of the show, Dan Erickson, who runs it with Ben Stiller, he was inspired by a lot of things, including the Truman Show, and he had this idea of like what simulations could be. But I think what really stuck it in his mind for him was one day he was working, like, these part-time jobs and stuff like that, like while he was still trying to, make it as, as a writer. He was working on all these different things. And then all of a sudden he realizes, what if I could just go to work and then come back and nothing will have changed. Like, he started to imagine a world where, like, he could wake up, and then like he doesn't even remember, like he doesn't have to go through like the hours of working.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can just block it out of his mind. And that's where the idea came from, because that's what severance is. Like you wake up and you go to work, but you don't have to deal with the stress of work. Like for
Mm-hmm.
all you know, you just come out at the time work is over, and then that's the end. If anything
Yeah.
happens inside there, they tell you.
Yeah.
And then he himself realized, okay, that's actually kind of dark, because I'm literally trying to give away precious hours of my life. And this isn't just precious hours, this is like prime hours of your life. Like like we're talking daytime, like 9 to 5, like when life is mostly happening for most of the
That's
world.
easily you work for what, around 250 days, maybe a terrible estimate, but
It's
something
most of
close to
your
that.
life. Yeah.
Yeah, for 30-40 years. So
So he realized
it's
that it was very dark to think about that. But then that gave him the idea for the show, because it's like, what if people actually did this? And then what if there was kind of a mystery behind it? And it's such a cool idea, because him realizing those implications then gave him the fuel to write a fully fleshed out story around it. And he does know the structure of the story. Like he knows what's supposed to happen, how it's ending. Reminds me of Ichiro Oda in that way, the guy who writes One Piece. And in Dan Erickson's case, he's left some things open so that the show develops organically, which I think is pretty cool.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really, really good idea. And I think it's so well done, because there's so many ways this can go wrong in terms of the concept of a show. And in terms of the directing, I know you want to talk about that in terms of directing
Mm-hmm.
and the production of it. But I think it's so perfect in the world that it's setting. It just executes it beautifully. Like it's a masterpiece. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, now that we're talking about directing, I have to mention Ben Stiller, because again, very random, but I'm here for it. He is just like, he has, I think one of my favorite things about Ben Stiller being involved in this project, and the fact that his company is also producing it, right? It's his use of space. It reminds me of Mr. Robot in a way. Like, I don't know if you ever watched Mr. Robot, but
No, I haven't.
characters were always framed in Mr. Robot in a way that was trying to tell you something. They weren't just in the center of the frame. They were sometimes very small in the frame to show you maybe like a specific background, or to show you a pattern, or to show you how alone they were. Sometimes they were actually in the center of the frame, but from a weird angle. Like, the show had a very interesting approach. Severance doesn't necessarily take it that far, but you do get a sense of how characters see each other because of the way the camera looks through things. You feel like you're actually kind of in this place with them.
Yes.
And
yes.
And they always show you a sense of scale. Like when you're looking at big places, like whether it's Lumen, anywhere else, like you get that sense of depth and scale, because you can see just how small everyone and everything is, in like compared to what this company is capable of and what they're trying to do. Most of which we don't know, because these guys are our protagonists. They're doing something called macro data refinement. No one knows what that is. They don't even know what they're doing. They just know how to do their job. They don't know the implications of it. They don't know like why certain levers that they're pulling result in certain actions. Like they have no ideas, right? So with that in mind, the cinematography showing us certain things actually is very helpful to the way we perceive the story. And even taking that further, you look at the main room that our protagonists work in, right? On the way there, you have this hallway that is so well lit, you don't even realize how tight it is.
It's
like it's a series of hallways. It's a literal maze. And Mark knows exactly how to get there. And I love that they do that in the first episode. They show him walking the entire way. So you just get a sense of like, yo, like, where is he going? How long is he walking? Just to show you how long it takes to get there. How does he... Bro, I feel like most of us would get lost on the way to the office every single day. But this guy 100%. Just keeps going. He gets there, 100%. And then there's this giant room, so spacious, with just like these 4 tables in the middle. Why did they do that? Like, they're essentially trying to tell you something, and it's showing you just how sequestered these people are, because that's their whole
Yeah,
department. Maybe
yeah,
they're making room for more people. You know, we've
yeah.
seen other rooms at other desks. Like, I don't know what the plan is, and there are definitely going to be some new characters, but
Mhm.
this is it's interesting. Like, it's an interesting approach, because who knows what they have cooking.
Yeah, I think the directing, and first of all, I would say when I first started watching the show, the one thing I do remember for sure is I saw Ben Stiller in the credits, and I know that I googled that to make sure there was not another one, because that took me by surprise, just to make sure I was it was him. But yeah, I think even when the characters are when it's just two characters having a dialogue, I think one scene that in terms of directing that I thought about as you were talking was Miss Cobell and Mark in the finale when they were talking. The tension is there. The camera does a perfect work in showing you the tension. Even you know how she said you look so tensed, you feel so tensed. I think where it was just showing them, the placement of it was perfect. It felt like I was talking to her herself, myself,
Yeah,
and even the party, when they were navigating through the spaces as the camera was going with them, yeah, it's perfect shots with giving him obviously like the props in terms of directing.
honestly, yeah, it's on. It feels like a match made in heaven, because you have such a creative mind, in Dan Erickson. You have Ben Stiller, and like all the techniques that he's bringing to this, all
Mhm.
the resources the production companies bringing to this, and then you have Apple that is able to do so much. It it makes me wonder, like, okay, the show is trying to say something. Like, this show is made with capitalism, like, kind of at the center of it, right? And
Yeah,
they're very capitalistic entities that are
yeah,
bringing it about. But it is saying something about late capitalism. It's saying something about the effect of it on labor and the effect of that labor on life. And that is very
mhm.
ironic. Like, it's almost as probably even more ironic, in fact, than Vought and Amazon,
Yeah,
with the boys. Like, it that one is funny, because like that show is, it relies a lot on shock value, but Severance,
yeah,
at least these days, it does. But Severance is doing a lot more, because it really gets you to pay attention. Even the side characters, right? The side characters all have a role to play. But before we get to
yeah.
them, like, let's talk about the main characters.
Mhm.
Who do you say had the best arc in the season?
I would say Dylan G.
Okay.
I think he did because
Because now he's panicking. He's no longer
he
worried about
was
his muscle shows.
he was to me he was the perfect example of not a capitalist robot, but essentially someone who's just happy to be part of the system. He's refiner of the year. I think it might have been intentional from the show to use him as the person who um what's contingency plan, what's the name of that thing they do when they activate their outies on the outside. But it might have been intentional from the show
The
to use
overtime
him.
contingency,
Yeah, over
OTC.
time. Yeah. Because he's the refiner of the year two times, three times running by the end of the show. He's always happy to be on the end of their benefits and their perks. He's this symbolism of someone who's happy to be part of the company, happy to, stand up for the company. He doesn't care about someone who's coming with this woke anti-capitalist ideas. He just wants to work. And by the end of the show, he showed in the contingency. Another spoiler. Sorry, guys. But he's shown, and to me, I think he was a perfect person because he's gone from that to wanting to destroy the entire institution from the head down. Um, yeah, I think that there's no more to say than obviously going from refiner of the year to the person activating the switch that destroys the whole company. So that's
You're
the
right.
summary.
I actually really like Irving's arc.
Okay.
Um, Him being somebody who clearly was involved in the military, like in the outside world, or maybe his father was, because we also see like a picture of his father. And inside Lumen, he is the most devout follower of, their handbook, that the employee handbook, that they basically treat as a Bible, because they worship the founder of the company, Kier Egan, who I guess maybe is called the grandfather. James Egan, who is the current CEO, refers to him as such in the finale. And that reveal, by the way, of James Egan, when we finally see him like in real life, I got like a little bit of like a chill in that moment,
Creepy,
because
yeah, creepy, yeah.
it
Heebie-jeebies,
was
that's what they
very
call it.
weird. It was actually so weird. I don't know why it was weird, but it was. It's just like, oh
It's
my
the
God,
amount of
like
Botox he has.
I was like, this is not, not the amount of Botox. I was like, okay, this is not what I was expecting to experience here today. I was pleasantly surprised. Let me just put it that way. And I think with Irving, all this is happening inside, but on the outside, he's trying to stop Lumen. He's part of the movement. I guess maybe we think he might be part of the movement that is aiming for what's
Oh,
called reintegration. He might be supporting them in some way, I think, because from what we see, he is trying to find a list of people who have been severed. He's trying to look for them on the outside world. I don't know how he got that list. Maybe it was through
why
PD, maybe
didn't
it
I
was through
think
the
of that?
reintegration people. Yeah, I mean, the reintegration people, they clearly have their hand in different things. Like they didn't start yesterday, so I'm sure they have some resources behind them. And for anybody who doesn't remember, reintegration is, well, essentially, there are people who are trying to see if severed people can be, well, unsevered, right? See if they can be put back together in terms of like their inside mind and their outside mind, because the idea of severance is that it's permanent.
Yeah.
So undoing it could lead to a bunch of, medical issues. It could lead to a bunch of things that people might not necessarily be prepared for. So I feel like Irving might be helping them one way or another, but I'm looking to see if that actually ends up being the case. So, we'll put a pin on that for now. But I feel like the arc he gets, like inside Irving, his innie, the participation that he gives to his work, to being with his coworkers, to upholding all the, I guess, values of Lumen, of Kier. It makes so much sense when you realize his military background, because of course he's innately someone who follows orders, right? I love that they have that link inside there. And he goes from that person to somebody who at the end is saying words like, let's burn this place to the ground.
Yeah.
Right. That was pretty interesting to me.
That's a good
and it was
shout.
nice watching that alongside Mark's arc, and even alongside Helly's arc. Like it was just very, very compelling.
Yeah. I think that's a very good shot. A good spot, to be honest. I don't know why that flew over my head for some reason. Like him having the list of severed people and just the map, and and his dreams obviously made sense, and his art that
because he
painting.
paints on the outside, right?
Yeah.
And that goo is coming inside, because he clearly isn't sleeping much. Or he's isn't resting the way he's supposed to. So like there's a lot of glitching. That's why he's always falling asleep inside. So I love how each character tells us something, not just about Severance, the process, but about the world that's going on outside. So we have all these clues.
Yeah, there's and it's also the fact that you can't really separate them. You can't really separate people in that way. There's no way our lives can be completely distinct at all in that manner. I think there's something there, obviously, that the show is telling us. You just can't do that. I think, speaking of Irving, rewatching the show, I was so annoyed. I don't think I remember being annoyed that he went after Bert G. But then watching it, or sorry, thinking about why I was annoyed, and then realized that these guys are kind of babies, like we've said. They're naive.
Exactly. I'm
They're
so glad
naive.
you've mentioned that.
Yeah, they're naive.
They are. They
Like,
haven't been
so-
around that long.
Exactly.
Which is why they are still in the id stage.
Yeah.
They're bright-eyed. They react to things in very weird ways. It actually, you know what? I'm going to use this to talk about Rickon.
Okay.
Mark's brother-in-law, the person who's married to Mark's sister. and his dumbass book, The You Are.
You know, it's so funny, yeah. Like we know this guy is dumb, but this thing seems like gospel to all of them
Oh my
inside.
God, yo. Like, but that's the point I'm making. People like you and I see this book and it's just like, bro, what are you on about? Like, what is this? But the innies inside Lumen see it and just like, oh my God, this is a revelation. And that's literally because they can only understand things at face value. Like, they're capable of understanding more, but they haven't unlocked that yet, right? So ostensibly, these guys have not been around that long. They're basically toddlers, right? Who knows how long this process has been going on? I don't think it's, I think it's still very new because there aren't that many people who've done it, and they're still fighting, you know, governmental approval to get certain things done, which is why they're courting that senator. Like, there's so many things. Like, when we find out what Helly's Audi is doing, right, and what she's up to, why Helly got created in the first place, we learn that there are a lot of factors that play, and there's a reason why the company is trying to court that level of goodwill. But you can see that they see severed people a certain way. Like, she explicitly says, I am a person, you are not, you know, to Helly, right? Meanwhile, these are people who are trapped inside there, because when you think about it, the Audi is able to come to work, and then they don't know what happens at work, but they go home, they still have their life, they can go to other places and stuff like that. But the innie is somebody who, because they don't sleep at work, by the way, this person is just always awake. From their perspective, like, they walk into the elevator and then immediately they walk back out. Life never ends. There's never any rest. You know, nothing new ever happens. They're just on a consistent cycle, but like, they don't necessarily feel that fatigue because ostensibly their Audi is getting rest outside, right? So their body is getting recharged, but they don't really do anything inside. If right? And it's maddening. It's absolutely maddening for them because their life is completely sequestered. And Rickon's book essentially allows them to think in a way that they're not supposed to. It allows them to open up their minds, because even though it's kind of, you know, nonsense to you and I, he's saying things that allow them to rechannel their thought process outside of what outside of what the company keeps giving them, right? Because like we've said, the innies are essentially like babies. Even Rickon's friends, like, it makes me wonder how many severed people are actually out there, because those people are weird. Those people were also like babies.
They are.
And I think that's why they were also enjoying the book, because remember when they were looking for Mark's sister's daughter, the baby, right? They were looking for the baby and everything, and then this, you know, I think Mark finds the baby, and then this other guy's in the room, and then he immediately goes as like, I found the baby. It was me. Tell everyone it was me who found the baby. Like, and I was like, wait, what's going on?
Weird. I found that weird, and I was wondering what the show
like
was
a toddler who is
there.
seeking credit.
Yeah.
Honestly, that whole season finale, it's one of the greatest episodes of TV I've ever seen. Specifically in terms of payoff and character journey. Like, the stakes felt so high and it was so earned. It's like,
honestly,
like, on paper, this show is not doing that much, but when you experience it, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. This is a lot. And I think there's a lot that I thought about regarding that Helly R line of, I'm a person that you're not. You know, there's nobody that will watch the show, listen to that line and not think about it, because in a sense, she's right. Because
it's a fabrication, hence the Truman Show inspiration, right?
If you think about the revolution that the guys in the office are going on, the macro data refinements, to what end? To what end? You know, because if you win, essentially, you're non-existent. Like, that's just the truth.
Pretty much. I actually wonder if whatever they're doing is helping with the testing of the Severance chips themselves, because there may be some fault in them. There's probably something inside them that actually allows the reintegration people to even explore the idea of trying it in the first place. It makes me think about, you know, something more in Irving's arc, for example, and his relationship with Bert. What if they've reset that relationship? They've reset Irving, put him in different departments, different places to separate him from Bert, but they keep finding each other inside, because just like with Mark and Miss Casey, thinking about the way he knows her from the outside world, like
Hmm.
maybe there's just certain kinds of connections that will always persist. In a sense, that's a glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak show. But the thing is, that hope is being fought for by the characters. And that vehicle is literally what is giving this show its emotional heart. So it works
Yeah.
so well. Like you would expect a show like this to feel somewhat sterile. And it
Yeah.
has that even in its palette. Like there's a little bit of red and blue, to evoke the whole like pill thing. But there's a lot
Hmm.
of green, there's a lot of white, there's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
gray. The
Definitely.
the color grading is so amazingly well done to actually depict this and make you feel something in that regard. But then once everything gets so intense towards the end, you start to really, really worry for these people. And a show that can make you do that is a good show. I mean,
Yeah.
even the villains, right? Or I guess the opposition, let me call them the ops. Milchick, he's too funny. How can one man be this diligent? like, like, bro, you really love this job, clearly. Because
He
he's
does.
just like, he's always present. He's always, I don't even know what his job title is, actually. What is he?
Yeah,
It's not as
I
if he
thought about
manages
that
them.
too. He's not security. He's not. He's just there to just have fun from the
He's their
torture, man.
caretaker.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Those scenes when he's dancing, oh my god, I know it's been memed to
Oh,
death,
it
but
was
that dance
hilarious.
scene was so
It was
funny because
hilarious.
this guy
It
takes
was hilarious.
everything so seriously. He's like, yeah, let's have a waffle party. Let's have a pizza party. Let's have a dance party. It's like, you've earned
Even
it.
when he's trying to break Dylan out of the room, he was like, "I can give you more. There's so much more you don't know about."
There's so much more you don't know about. It's crazy. Oh my god. Yo, I was
Oh,
dying.
need
Like
more
I actually
eggs,
started
more
laughing out loud when
waffles.
he said that. Because what
Wow.
do you mean?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that was hilarious.
Oh wow.
It
Oh
was
my god.
hilarious. I wonder though, like I'm interested as to his own outside life because I,
Yeah, me
I
too. I think we might
yeah.
learn a bit of it in season two.
And it's so cool though. I think the show is so cool and the way that it makes you interested in these people. Why do I want to know about Mr. Milchick's outside life? Why am I
Mm-hmm.
interested about that?
Exactly.
Even if I wasn't interested about that, the way they will tell you is so fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, even say for example, when they give you drips of Irving's life or Brett G's life,
Mm-hmm.
you might not have thought twice about it, but then when you get thrown into that moment, you're like, oh wow, this is an interesting perspective on this person's life.
Yeah.
There's more to him than this. And it's done really well where you're, really into these characters, no matter who they are. Um, yeah, yeah.
But what about Miss Cobell? Because I mean, we think about, for example, her life in the house next to Mark. We see her bed. We see that it looks like a hospital bed. We see like a tube, right? Does this what looks like a feeding tube, and it has I guess the name of someone who I'm guessing is her mother near her shrine that she keeps to cure. There's a part of me that wonders, right, if Lumen with their history with like medical technology and such created a faulty tube that led to her mother dying or something like that. And
Okay.
now she's trying to, it's either she's like, if you consider that, it's either she's loyal to Lumen regardless and she also needs deliverance, or it's a situation where she is trying to destroy the company from the inside out. That's why she was so distressed when she got fired. The thing about that, right? Because like they fired her when they found out that, because Haley R tried to commit suicide at one point when she's trying to escape, and Cobell did not tell the higher ups. They found out, and I think that's the reason they fired her. But then she finds out what the innies are trying to do in the finale. When she goes to stop it, I think maybe she's rushing to stop it so she can win back favor and get her job back, not necessarily because she's that loyal to Lumen, but though it could be one or the other. But what do you
Yeah.
think?
Interesting perspective, but I think I only watched that show one way, which is this is
That she's
she
an
is
op.
a loyalist to the core. I mean, the shrine, the verses,
That shrine is
Yeah,
so crazy, bro.
it's insane. It's so insane. Um, and she clearly has no friends because even Greyna tries to engage in conversation here and there. She's just
Yeah.
not interested. Um, yeah, I
Yeah, she's
mean,
such a
there
weirdo.
might be
Like,
flesh. Yeah, there might be flesh to your theory, but and we might find out in season two. I just didn't watch that
I
any
don't know.
of it.
Maybe it's a bit of both. Because I remember when she actually meets Mark's sister, and her first question is like, "Oh, did you have a vaginal birth?" What do you mean? Like, who asked that upon first meeting? Oh
Oh
man,
my
because it
goodness.
makes you wonder. Like, is
Oh
Lumen
my
is that their
goodness.
goal? Are they trying to grow humans? Like, are they
She's
trying to
doing
create
some
people?
very risky things though if she's
She
against the
is.
company because
Yeah.
going to the funeral and trying to get the
Hmm.
chip that was very very risky business. Um
Yeah.
so
It's wild, and it also makes me think about Helly's Audi, right? And what she is up to. Like, is she truly malicious, right? Or is she just vying for James' approval? Like,
mm,
maybe there's like a little girl in her that wants to jump out. And obviously, because of who she is on the outside world, like that, it now makes sense why her innie is so entitled and brazen and expects to get what she wants when she wants it,
yeah.
right? Prone to tantrums, trying to kill herself, threatening to cut her fingers off, which definitely did not work out well for her. Like, I feel like there's a sense of wonder in each of these people that comes out. Like, Mark is clearly somebody. His innie gives me a glimpse of who he might be if he wasn't so
Mm.
miserable about his wife's death, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And the kind of boy
yeah,
that he would have been, so filled with
yeah,
wonder, trying to do the right thing, trying to rise
yeah.
up. Like, I still remember the way like Adam Scott plays the role so well, bro. Like,
I,
you know, may I
oh
have
my
a
god.
handshake?
And you know what? Yeah, I think even you don't even have to watch his innie much to tell, but when they talk about his grief and when they talk about Gemma, when you see the people around him talk about it, you can already tell. You can
Hmm.
already tell. They've written the characters so well to go through these grief, sorry, with him.
Hmm.
That you just know that this is somebody that's suffering. He's really suffering,
Yeah.
and I think, sorry, just to go back a bit to Helly and why she's doing this. One thing I found fascinating was that tussle between her Ini and her Alti. Um, and there's so much that you think about. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe if it's just me being a serial overthinker, but there's so much I was thinking about with this show because when you have that battle with the person that you're supposedly at work, that is you essentially, and we see the battle that she has with herself, and this person inside is wanting to make that person outside suffer, and that person
Yeah.
outside is so adamant that if you do this to me, I'll make you live long enough. But I'm
To
thinking,
regret it. And
wouldn't
that,
you be miserable
whoa.
as well? Wouldn't you
But
be
she wouldn't,
miserable as
because
well?
she has no memories of what happens in there
No, no, no. But she's saying, if you chop off my fingers, I will keep you alive long enough. But
to
I'm
regret it.
saying,
Yeah.
so you're willing to risk your fingers being chopped off to keep this person miserable, but then you're going to be miserable when you have your fingers chopped off. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, but I think the thing is
Like
she's
everybody
threatening her. She's
loses,
saying,
yeah.
don't cut off my fingers. She's not willing to lose her fingers. Which is why she's saying, if you make me lose my fingers, I will do something much worse to you. So she's
But
hoping
I
that will
am
be a
you, and
deterrent.
I am crazy enough to actually chop off my fingers.
Oh my God, man. Wow, wow, wow. Ugh.
So yeah, it was. I think it was really interesting seeing that. Obviously, like that, battle of yourself, and obviously, there's a lot of questions of reintegration there, and the memories. But yeah,
Would you say
I'm really
reintegration is
interested.
even good? Because I know that's something that you've thought about. Because obviously we know severance is permanent, right? We know,
Mhm,
and we know that the reintegration people, or the people who are for that, are
mhm,
trying to fix what they think is unnatural here.
mhm.
But then again, are there cons to reintegration? Like, how do you feel about that?
I
Is it
I
even a
don't
good
think.
idea? Is it worth it? Clearly, it's giving us, like, a resistance in the outside world that is making the
Yeah.
show much more interesting to watch. But within the world of the show, how does that even function? Like, is it even worth doing?
I
What do
I
you think?
don't I don't think it's good. I don't think
Hmm.
it's good. And I would love to be proven otherwise, because I do not believe that people who have been alive for 30, 40 years need a new personality thrown into them. It's the memories are
Hmm.
fine. I think the memories are fine. I think it's that person in there essentially has is a being.
Hmm.
It's you, but it's
Oh
also a
my
being.
God. That makes things so dark because it's like, okay, because it's something I've thought about as well, right? Because essentially when someone gets fired from their job, that means their
Mm.
innie the person dies. The person is never coming back. Like that's the end
Yeah,
of your life.
yeah, yeah. I mean, Bergie retiring. I don't know how they did that, but it's, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I don't think it's good, because there's so many ethical questions that this. I love the ethical questions, because yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that person is a being. I firmly believe that person is a being, and I don't think two beings should live in one person, because
Yeah,
Mark,
probably not.
Mark exactly. So it's even Mark is probably the closest to being as similar to himself on the outside. I believe.
Yeah.
We've not seen much of Dylan to know, but you can even tell when he's severed. There's still so much that he needs to learn about this world, and there's so many questions, and he wouldn't have that connection. You're taking the emotions of this person. You just can't switch it like that. That person also has emotions. That person has memories. He's not going to have the connection he has with Devon as much as his outie would have. You know, if Devon hypothetically something happened to her, Mark on the inside, he will be affected because he knows it's his sister, but it's not going to hit him as much as his outie. So I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think two beings should be in one. Basically, I would love the idea of them winning, but they shouldn't win. Basically.
Okay. I guess we'll have to see how that goes because that's one of the main questions that would need to be answered as they move towards that goal. Right alongside the question of how they got Miss Casey to exist when you consider who Miss Casey is on the outside
Mhm.
world, um or I guess in the outside world, like how is that like the next step after Severance? Like is she a prototype? It's interesting.
I
It's interesting to me in
I
that
want
way.
I,
It makes me
I
wonder if they
wonder
were storing her
if
somewhere else.
I also wonder if there's obviously that question of what was the circumstances around the accidents, and how did the company exactly
Hmm.
make execute that idea. But I wonder if her situation is more torturous than the others,
Hmm.
because they're essentially using her to shut down the emotional capacity of the Severance. And
And she's always asleep. Like every time they
yeah,
see her, that's when she's awake. Whenever they don't see her, she's like in cold storage somewhere.
yeah, yeah. So
Oh, it really is like Westworld
she
season one. Hmm.
yeah, it's I think hard she's very her whole story is very dark. It's very, very dark. And yeah, I don't even want to go into the grains of it, but my
Well,
god, that
I feel
company
like
is horrible.
yeah, like the fact that Cobell is obsessed with whether or not they can remember each other is interesting to me, and I want to see how that affects not just them but even the new characters, based on
Mhm.
some on pictures and stuff from like trailers and whatnot. Um, I know Gwendolyn Christie is going to be in the show. Um, Anyone who
I'm
does
so
remember
fresh
Gwendolyn
minded, I
Christie,
love it. Like literally.
yeah,
I've
yeah,
not seen
Gwendolyn Christie.
trailers.
Anyone who
Trailer
doesn't know, that's
pictures,
Brienne of
nothing.
Tarth from Game of Thrones. Um,
Oh
yeah,
mad.
and Captain
Mad.
Phasma from Star Wars. The Force
Mad.
Awakens. So I think this show has so much to offer. Again, if everyone should go rewatch it. If you haven't watched it already, go check it out. The show will actually blow your mind. Like you may feel like certain things have been spoiled here, but I promise you, we haven't even scratched the surface of all the madness that is going on in this particular series. So yeah, definitely get into that.
I feel like there are some shows that the spoilers are like the show is so good that the spoilers wouldn't even.
The spoilers actually enrich the experience.
Oh,
Some
why
shows
did
are
Miss
like that.
Casey die?
Oh my
You're
god,
so curious to see how they actually executed this thing. But
it's so well done. It's so well done. But yeah, I think this is a good place to call it. Thank you everyone for sticking with us up until this point. We are really excited to cover season 2, and we're going to be doing so every week. We will be joined by some special guests as we do this, so stay tuned for that. And honestly, I think this show, like the fact that it's back, is like a really, really good start to my year, because it's just nice when you don't have to wait till like the summer or the fall for like all the really good TV shows.
yeah.
that you're expecting to come out. So something I want to see how much of a following it can actually get, and I want to see, because obviously it did quite well. It got nominations and people know about it, but I don't think it's truly as mainstream yet. Like, this show needs to get back on that water cooler stuff. Like maybe it can really become bigger than what people who simply follow Apple TV Plus are able to see. Like maybe it can get bigger than Ted Lasso. Who knows? It's something we'll have to check. But yeah, any final thoughts, Chinedu?
No, just obviously thank you to the listeners for listening to both of us, talk so glowingly about a show that we really, really love.
I just realized I can't think of anything bad to say about this show.
I wouldn't even want to. Honestly, like, there are things that I was just like, yeah, I don't care. Like, man, but it's I love the show. I love the questions it gives me. I love how much it makes me think about the world around us, about capitalism, about grief. I love the answers to those questions that it gives us. If you haven't watched it and you've stuck with us so far, even through the spoilers, please do watch it. I promise you, it's still worth the experience of watching season 2. And obviously, if you've watched it with us, we're all super excited to go on this journey together.
Yeah. So once again, we will be covering season 2 every single week, and that is going to be quite a spectacular journey. So until then, thank you all so much, and I guess we'll see you in the next one.